Hello and welcome to Poems On. I'm Al Basil, and this is the fourth episode of season 4. And our theme for tonight is family. My new guest is Marybeth Rua-Larsen, and my returning guest is Matt W. Miller. And it's great to see both of you tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Al. I appreciate it.
Yeah, doing well, Al. Thank you again for having me.
That's okay. This is always enjoyable. So, as you know, I always invite the new guest to go first. So, if you will go ahead and read whatever you choose for your first poem, and give us an introduction if you like, and we'll kick it around when you're done for a bit, and that's how we'll go.
Okay. So this is a sonnet. It's called Shark Bites, and it's written for my Uncle Pat, T-Pat, Portuguese, and they always use that term of endearment, who lived 1920 to 2015, and he was a World War II veteran. And in fact, our town just had a hometown heroes program, and I just had a banner made for him that's going to hang downtown, and I'm excited about that. So, Shark Bites. He lost his brakes descending Whetstone Hill and laughed. At 94, a lark. We held our tongues, arranged repairs, relieved, until he clambered up a 10-foot ladder, compelled to clear his gutters of their twigs and leaves. We balked, then threatened, and still he did not bend. He was a man who did, scrunched up his sleeves and trimmed his hedge to a 3 by 1 foot end. He wrapped the pipes in rags to stop a leak. He drilled the trunks of discount Christmas trees and jammed in boughs, his Pennywise technique. His shorts exposed the scars above his knees and prompted tales of shark bites far from shore. He never once talked about the war.
Yeah, thanks. So the next to the last line, the scars prompt tales of shark bites far from shore. But those are tales that he never told.
When we were kids and he'd have a cookout in the backyard, he'd be wearing shorts and he had these huge scars, and he would just brush it off and say, "Oh yeah, that was, I got bit by a shark." And he was always like that. You never wanted to get serious. He was always kind of like a lighthearted jokester kind of guy. So I didn't realize until much later, and I was a really gullible kid. So I believed that for years and years until my father said, no, he didn't get bit by a shark. That's a war wound. So
That's funny. It's an interesting take on a very familiar theme. Matt, you're younger, but my father was a World War II vet, and he too never really talked about the war. If asked, there were certain things that he would talk about, but it was clear there was a lot that he wouldn't talk about. But he never once sort of made up a story to laugh it off. So this is an excellent character reveal.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, David Maloney, who's a novelist from the same town I'm from, and he was talking about his father-in-law who was in Korea, and it's actually his father-in-law's father who was in Korea and World War II, but would never talk about, quirky guy, funny guy, but never would talk about what he did or what happened in the wars. And that was that sort of generation of, we don't talk about it. We don't have the language. We don't even know how to talk about it in some ways. Like we haven't given access to the permission to talk about it and access to a kind of language that would allow us to talk about it, even if they needed to. They just did not, for the most part.
Yeah,
generation.
it's true, and I can recall coming across an interview on YouTube with a vet who had been involved in the Battle of the Bulge, and in his particular case, he had agreed to talk. And he talked for about a half an hour about being in the Battle of the Bulge and involved in Hurtgen Forest and some of the worst fighting in the European theater. And it was interesting to hear him talk because he had made he had come to a point of accepting that he would talk, and he didn't have a way to talk about it. But once he got started, there was a kind of a relief that came into his voice, that he realized that he was talking about it. So it was clear to me that it had been a long period of time that he had been just like these people that we're referencing, who, I mean, they didn't all get together and agree that they wouldn't talk, but that was a conclusion that so many of them came to. So it was fascinating for me to see this one guy, because in the moments that I was listening to him, I was imagining my own father and all of these other guys that I knew that didn't talk having that kind of unburdening, which of course none of us ever got from them, and they didn't have for themselves. But yeah, this is this is a sonnet that doesn't announce its sonitude. And what I mean by that is, and it's really noticeable when you read it, Marybeth, because a good reader of a sonnet will manipulate the rhymes, the line ends, in such a way that if you're not reading it on the page, you're not hit over the head by the form. And so if you're not aware of the form of this, it works so it so strongly evokes the circumstance that you don't miss not knowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It really is, ars calare artem, where you're hiding the thing that you're doing. And I particularly prize that. I think it's one of the things that is worth striving for. So, thank you.
I think it kind of serves the subject of the poem too. It's in a form. It's stuck in this, not stuck, but it has to work in this form. It's like the subject of the poem is not revealing and sort of like this is who I'm supposed to be. This is the character I have to be to get through my day. And it's like I'm in the working within that tight form forces you to expand the imagination, but also rein it in too. So there's a lot of that tension between trying to blow up and just trying to keep it in, which you kind of feel in the character you're talking about.
Yeah. It's one of the good reasons for tight forms. Mm-hmm. Beyond knowing that you can do it. There are certain subjects that lend themselves better to the tight form. And, we're going to see some very interesting variations on form as we go through this evening. So we can return to the idea of what a form is doing, or what a different kind of form is doing. Both of you have prose poems. I don't know if you're going to choose to read the one that you had in your group, Matt, because you sent more than 5. But
I think I missed that note about how many. I'm like, I'll just throw these together, and I'm like,
having more than 5 is great. You can just choose the ones you want.
Yeah,
it's only when there's less than 5 that I have to ask for, beg for more. So, well, this is a great way to get us started. Let me pull yours up so I can see what you're doing, and we can see which one you read first for us, Matt.
I have to pull it up too now. So yeah, I was gonna start. I think I just was gonna start with this poem, which was the title of my second book too, Club Icarus. In some ways, it's the first poem I wrote being aware of familyness in a way, not writing about like a parent or uncle. I had become a family with my wife. It's our first child. And it's the first poem I wrote that dealt with fatherhood, I think. And in this poem, at the time I was living in the Bay Area, and I recall being on the BART and just thinking about we were flying back and forth a lot to the East Coast, to the West Coast, to see family, and then we go back. And I'd always been sort of tense about flying anyway, but once I had a child and I was putting the child in that situation, I felt like, oh my God, they're not choosing to be on a plane. Um, and then it occurred to me like, oh my God, every time you bring in a life, you also bring in a death. That thing is going to die. This thing you brought in, and it really kind of shook me. And I just had this idea of, being on a plane and Icarus, the Greek myth, coming and crashing into the train, all into the plane, and all of us spilling out and becoming like these, Icarian characters. And I just had this image of my daughter, and I'll read the poem so you get the idea of it. But it's like, yeah, this is the first time. It's my first father poem. And then I've written a lot of poems about my kids and my family and stuff, but this is sort of like the launching point for it. I wrote so many
Nice.
now. So she's a baby in this. She just turned 21 last weekend. So it's been a while since I wrote this. But Club Icarus. We're no more than a few silver seconds in the air when that winged and cocky boy gets sucked into a turbine, sparking off a fire that rips the starboard wing away from the fuselage, shucking passengers out and raining us over Northern California, dozens of us dropping towards the bay, and you can imagine the screams, I'm sure. The prayers cast up, then down the twirling sky. And yet here's my daughter laughing the whole way down, her yellow hair whipping around her first teeth smile as she titters at the tilted wonder of what is happening, rolling airborne over and over as we all drop like sacks of wet clay. And for a second, I want to snag her to show her how frightened she should be so I can hug her safe one last time. But the way she looks laughing, I just can't. And so as the brick of the bay comes up to kiss my back, I watch my little girl giggling, grinning, floppy-cheeked into the wind, and then, damn, if I don't see, right before the world splits my sides, wings, all her own butterfly from her back, and lift her laughing back into the blue.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's just that idea of like you want to hold your kids safe for as long as you can, but then like you just got to let them go and let them have their own destiny at some point. And I think I was realizing that even at when she was a baby, and I think that served me well to like she's going to do her thing, and she has.
Well, the way that you described the birth of this, it sounded very deliberate. That you imagined it. The way that it's expressed has two elements that I find dreamlike. One is the fluid shifting of the images as we run through it, and of course, coming to a counterintuitive end, where although you're going to crash, she isn't, is very dreamlike, and it's got that kind of a transformative quality that some dreams can have.
Mhm.
The other element that speaks to me along those lines is that it's all one sentence. And it's great to hear you read it because you can understand how it's all one sentence, because you've strung the phrases and the images together in such a way that you keep unspooling it. And it's not awkward for you to read it. And it's not awkward to read it on the page either. So it's what I admire about it is that it has its own form of expression. It doesn't have what we would call a traditional form, but it's got anything this long and this shape shifting. It's got its own form. It's an identifying way of saying this. So, yeah.
And I'm trying to recall when I first wrote it, but I know like it was spilling out. This thing kind of spilled out on a notepad, and I knew I think at the time like it's going to have to be somehow one sentence or very little pausing because the moment didn't feel like it could allow for pausing. You don't have time to think about it in the
Yeah.
moment of
Well,
the action.
exactly.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rush of the airplane and everything. Yeah. That's exactly how I felt when I was reading it. And
Yeah, go ahead, please.
no, I love the ending too, because, you know, it's also what we hope for with our kids. I mean, we always hope that they survive us, right? And I lost a brother, you know, and I watched my parents go through that.
Yeah.
And you know, it's very painful. So it was just wonderful at the end to say, yes, it's hard, but that's what's supposed to happen, you know.
And it's funny, just I wrote into that, like I didn't know these wings were gonna come. I just started with this plane crash, like something happening, like, oh my God, she's
Really?
laughing. What is going on? All of a sudden, wings. And you go,
Wow.
it's always fun when you're writing something, it surprises you too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you part of you understood that a transformation was required, you know, and then there's also the maybe somewhere along the line, you know, you heard the if you know you're going to fall, you might as well try to fly.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Yeah. That idea. Yeah. It's like, but enjoy the fall.
Yeah.
Sort of like
Boy.
the myth of Sisyphus. Might as well enjoy the rock rolling down the hill.
Yeah, because it's going to go down again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, the ending is very satisfying, um, because, for me at least, the speaker is still going to be destroyed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As you say, before you know, my back is split. You see this, and so um, there's this transposition of the life beginning and the life ending in the moment that doesn't dwell on the end of the speaker's life. It ends on the continuation of the child's life, so that it somehow cheats the death.
Yeah.
You know, I like that.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I don't have children, so it's wonderful for me to read anytime I see these things about children so well done. I get a special kick out of it because that's not part of what I've been given, you know, to say. So it's great to see it said.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I have to rely on not having children. I have to look back more than I look forward. And so for me, it's looking back to my parents and to my grandparents. I was fortunate enough to have my grandparents alive until I was in my early 20s. And so I had a long time of appreciating being around them. And you're going to see that as I go through my pieces for the evening. But I'm going to start with my mother. And this picks up a little bit on what I was just saying about the end of your poem, Matt, because there is a kind of a transformation that is a kind of a rebirth in this poem, as you'll see. And although I mention it in the poem, I will just say that anybody that ever ate at my mother's house, and lots of people did, she wanted to have a lot of children, but only had me. And so she loved feeding lots of people. And anybody that ever ate at her table knows that she was just this spectacular. People still rave about her cooking that only ate there once 30 years ago. And I run into them and they say, oh, I'll never remember this thing that she made. So this is what I was up against in this situation of this poem. It's called Getting the Eggplant Right. Behind me, wooden chest of magic spells on yellowed 3x5-inch index cards. The shorthand fashioned for my mother's eyes. The understood directions left unsaid. Before me, blackness verging into purple, and plumped out to the skin the mystery of eggplant thumped against my fingernail. I guess I have utensils for the job. Within me, the uncertainty that comes of inexperience, and deeper down, the doubt. Magicians work uncanny spells, and all through childhood I'd been witness to my mother's magic. How could I presume to do myself what only she could do? Her cooking had observed the unities as classically as Aeschylus. It looked, smelled, tasted, satisfied, all of a piece, and nourished me as well. Like little else encountered in this world, in every way it was exactly what it seemed to be. My buddies lingering in meal times knew I always counted myself blessed at birth. My mother had been gone for 7 years before I thought to try her recipes. I'd long since given up those tastes for dead, as irretrievable as Christmas from the 50s. I'd provided for myself for decades, cooked for women too, the ones whose generation thought it servitude instead of celebration. But against my mother's standard, what I did in haste could never qualify as genuine. Some people eat to live, she used to say, while others live to eat. It was her art. I stood over the trimmed medallions, salt shaker in hand, and watched the sweat bead up, then patted them with paper towels dipped in egg and breadcrumbs, lightly fried to dark oat color, layered in a baking dish with thin cut slabs of ropey mozzarella, alternating milky white and brown, then drowned in the tomato red, a sauce smelling of crushed herbs and hard grated cheese. A trip to the preheated oven then, where covered, it could bubble up at will. The volume of the kitchen filled with warmth, aroma, and the melody of hope. You'll call it ordinary sorcery to get the eggplant right. But one may do, another may repeat. Ingredients insensible can't recognize the hand that shapes and chooses them. The laws of heat, anonymous, work on in no one's name. There is no magic touch. At best, we are the agents of the earth that brings to being according to the way things have to be. But taste it. Tell me that it's not the same as when I came in after playing ball until it got too dark the week before we kids went back to school. Or you can say that anyone could make it taste this way. Think what you want. Or taste the truth again. How does the universal work on earth except by way of local blessings? How else does it choose its agents? I don't know. I claim no special virtue for my mother or for me. But after what has sprung from her hands and from mine, I know we share a closeness now we never could before. And while the song of eggplant in the mouth, a chime that's come to many, patiently can wait to be repeated, rung anew to people not yet born, I lift a fork, and in a bite, my childhood lives again. After the years of hopelessness, I find what I recover pierces to the root.
That would be that's a great, that phrase, ordinary sorcery, would be a wonderful collection of poems about this topic. About family, or even just like the topic of this, it's just a great phrase to describe what we're doing and the way you write it and the way family is. Good and bad. There's magic. There's a sort of magic there, and it's ordinary. I love that ordinary sorcery.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
I underlined the same phrase. That's what I was going to mention as well. Yeah, really love that. It's interesting to me that it took you 7 years. And I thought about that a lot because I know after my grandmother died, it takes you time to kind of recoup from all of that and then want to try it out on your own. So I could really relate to that, needing some space from it and then coming back at it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think that 7 years is as much, I mean, it says something about me, but it says something about how good she was.
Yeah.
It's like if she'd just been average, um, it would have occurred to me to try to capture what she did a lot quicker. Um, and that was one of the great days honestly, of my life when I took the eggplant casserole out of the oven and ate it. It was like
You found it.
I honestly thought it couldn't be done, much less that I could do it. I honestly thought it was only she.
It's also,
So
I can imagine there's like a fear there of not getting it right. But of getting it right and it not being as good as you remembered. Like, oh, maybe was it that good? Was it just memory that I built up and just that you're taking a big risk there too with that.
I
Yeah.
think you're right. And that also is probably another element that goes into waiting 7 years.
Yeah.
It's uh, are you gonna? I didn't think very. I just assumed I couldn't do it. No, so I mean, there's that, and I wasn't much troubled by the thought that maybe it wasn't as good as I remembered, because if I couldn't duplicate it, I would never know how good it was anyway.
Hmm.
But honestly, the evidence is compelling from a large group of people that she fed. So there is that. But this was when my mother died after my father, and so I was the one, and I'm the only child, so I broke up the house, and I got all her recipes, and her recipes were all written out, but they weren't recipes that you would write to a student. They were memos to herself, so they had to be decoded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she'd left, and I mentioned that in the early part of the poem, that
Yep.
that the understood things aren't written down. And so I have a bunch of cousins that she cooked for that are younger than I am, that uh, when I got all these recipes, one of them said, did you get any of her recipes? And I said, yeah, I've got a whole pile of them. And I have some very good friends, a couple who make and restore books. And they said, well, we can scan all of your mother's handwritten recipes and we'll make a book out of it, a hardcover book. And we'll make however many you want. So I had enough made that my two best friends and my 6 cousins could all get a copy of this book. And when I gave it to my cousins, I said to them, what I want us to do at some point is to all get together and have a dinner where each of us makes something.
Oh, yeah.
From the book. And we did it long after this. And we only did it once. But that was really a great resurrection of my mother's memory.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. That is just such a great, ritual and coming together. Because I mean, taste and smell is so connected to memory.
Yeah.
Brain.
Well, that's why I tell the story here in this show, because that's a family
Yeah.
That's a very specific family thing, and I'm going to get to a very different one later on. But so anyway, that's thank you. This was
We might have to ask you for some copies of that book. It sounds good.
it's it's kind of it's frustrating in a way because one of the things that I like the most that my mother made was a ricotta pie, and I found 6 different recipes, and I don't know which one is the one that I remember.
Oh my God.
I haven't had the nerve to try all of them.
All 6.
So
What's that saying? You know, it's the last place you look, it's the last pie you cook. You know, that's the
that's a good saying, but I got to think about it. What does it mean?
So that's the last pie. It's always the last pie you cook. I'm like, what? Inside joke.
Wow. Well, okay. Let's come round to round 2, and Marybeth, which of the ones that you said are you going to read next?
I'm going to read the Sestina,
Okay.
Conversing with Dom Pedro. So I write very little that comes out almost whole, and this one did. There's very little I did afterward to revise it. And I was in Portugal. I had gotten a fellowship with Disquiet, and I was taking a course, poetry course in form with Erica Dawson.
Oh, Erica.
Yeah, so Erica, if you ever see this, I love you and thank you. And she just runs a great workshop, and this, she was doing it on Sestinas, and this is what came out. So, conversing with Dom Pedro, while at the foot of the statue of Dom Pedro I in Cascais, Portugal. Too often we wear the unnecessary hair shirt, punishing the feeling rather than the deed. Though not Dom Pedro, whose father killed his lover, and Dom Pedro threw so many rings of vengeance in the air, he bejeweled himself in justice, ripping out the hearts of her assassins, a response of the body, where only flesh for flesh will do. There's not enough wine or pills or therapists to quell that kind of rage. And even if a vat of wine is the mere beginning of acceptance, there's no relief from the hair shirt, because you're still alone, right, Dom Pedro? All you can do is twist the rings of your bony fingers and relive that moment of justice, which will fade like all muscle memory, like the body that loses a limb and feels phantom pain, a body that goes through the motions of the day, sipping a civilized glass of wine, believing that time and distance are the cure. But the hair shirt resurfaces in dreams, doesn't it, Dom Pedro? Where Inez is whole again and in your arms, ringed in the crown she should have worn, a crown of justice and a crown upon a head upon a throne, the one she was denied. And justice denied never leaves you, waking or dreaming, body or bodiless. It is for all the ages. Wine meted out in drops across the centuries, the hair shirt you wear for the one you've loved and lost. Isn't that true, Dom Pedro? Isn't that why you buried yourself toe to toe with Inez, ringed in the glory of your love, one that can never be unwrung, unbodied, unwined, unshirted, or unjust? Your body will be her body, and her body will be your body, because if you don't believe that, how do you go on? Wineless and sane and loving, but always the hair shirt, scratching at the might have been. Dom Pedro, I understand all of it, Dom Pedro. My mother is dying, shrinking out of her wedding ring while I am walking the streets of Cascais. It's an injustice, a betrayal, but she insisted, not in words, but in the body language of mothers and daughters. A look, a nod, a glass of wine we shared, and me in my hair shirt. We will share the hair shirt, Dom Pedro, raise our wine glasses in our ringed hands, and believe in the justice of the body.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Bringing that around to the speaker and her mother at the end just deepens this so much, so much. But the line that dominates for me is justice denied never leaves you. And that's a true statement far beyond the perimeters of this poem.
Mm.
And, you know, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking like sometimes I think about like it reminds me of a sestina I wrote about my brother. I forgot to put in not the topic, but like that I wrote a sestina about a family member. Like, oh my God, why didn't I put that in there? But just the idea of like when you find these words that you want to settle on and repeat and like how you're bound by them in a sestina, but like hair shirt, I gotta say hair shirt over and over again and make it work. And you really do make it work. And then it brings it back to, wearing our own hair shirts and the suffering we do and sharing the suffering. But how did you come upon those? Like, I want to use hair shirt in Don Pedro and all these things. Was the subject? I'm always curious about sestinas. Sometimes I have students like write 6 words down and then trade it to the person on the left of them. Okay, go write a sestina with their 6 words. They're like, no, but they actually like it because they're less bound by what the original intent was. They just have 6 words they have to play with. So they're like, oh, I can do anything with this. But I don't know how this subject came to you and why a sestina for it.
Well, that was the exercise
That was the exercise,
did
yeah.
with Erica, and we had just been on a trip to Cascais. So there was an art studio there with Paula. We saw Paula Rigo's art, which was really influential. And I don't know. The words they were the first 6 words that came out.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when you said that this is one of the only of your poems that just came out in a piece, in other words, you wrote it stem to stern in one sitting, and essentially didn't go back and rework it in any significant way.
No.
That's incredible because sestinas are so hard to do well. And it usually takes a lot of pushing, prodding, moving, and rethinking, and to come to it. So just for it to just be pulled out like out of your brain, like Athena from Zeus, it's like incredible.
And I think that was Erica's point, was to not labor over it, to just go for it for beginning to end and see what happens. And it just really in that moment worked for me.
Well, somehow you had some kind of inner compass that led you to vary the context for the repetitions in such a way that the whole thing is like a kind of a detailed essay on this theme that for which the repetitions are simply the necessary components. In other words, you're not repeating because you have to repeat. You're repeating because you're talking about something and returning again and again to say something different about these elements that are the common elements. So it's really successful as again, doing something with a form that doesn't oppress the reader with this is in form. It doesn't, the message dominates more than the manner. So you don't think so much about the form that it's in. I mean, if we can see it on the page, so we see that it's organized into stanzas of 6 lines, and that might tip us off if nothing else did, even before we read it. But to hear you read it, it's incantatory, and of course there's repetition in incantations. Repetition is native to incantations. And so that's the flavor of this. But what really strikes me is that it goes from the speaker looking at the statue of Dom Pedro and then getting very intimately into the life of Dom Pedro and all of the things that happen. And then bringing in this sort of feeling that I'm here while my mother is dying, but she wanted me to be here. She sent me here. Not in so many words, but she sent me here. That's, again, it covers so much emotional distance from, I mean, when was Dom Pedro, was this the King of Portugal or something? And
yeah, way back. I should know what the dates are. I'd have to go back to my notes and look.
But, like maybe 16th, 17th century, it's way back. So you cover the arc of this, travels so far, from a statue that commemorates something from hundreds of years ago, right to the personal feelings of the speaker. And in doing so, it universalizes this whole dynamic, of remorse. Is it guilt? Is it remorse? For me, the difference, guilt is, or is it remorse or is it regret? That's what I wanted to say. Because remorse and guilt is the feeling that you have for what you've done that you wish you hadn't done. But regret is only the feeling that you have for what's lost that you can't get back.
Yeah.
It's not something that you did. You didn't have to make it happen. But to be remorseful, it has to be something you did. And of course, the description of the revenge is just delightful.
It's a great story. It really is.
That is that great turn though into my mother is dying, shrinking out of her wedding ring, and just I'm thinking too in the crafting of this, and you did labor up. You just kind of wrote it through like Erica had you do, and did that just hit you like, oh my God, my mother's coming up? Did you see that on the signpost coming? Or did you know it was coming? Like,
yeah.
Oh, I just wrote into it.
Yeah, because it was hard. I wanted to be there, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity. But at the other, we didn't know how much time she had left.
Yeah.
So she was on my mind a lot.
So you knew when you began the poem that you were going to bring her in at the end?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was kind of asking. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not exactly, but it didn't surprise me when it came up.
Right.
Yeah.
She's just
it's
in
there.
Your head so much at that moment.
Yeah. Wow. That's these are wonderful. This is I'm never surprised at how enjoyable it is to go over work with people that that I admire and respect and see as peers. So this is great. So you're up next there, Mr. Miller.
All right, let me see. I'm tempted to, but I didn't include it. It was to do another Sestina, but I didn't have it in the packet here, so I think I'll see it. Do something you guys can actually read. Also, my Sestina's not as good, so I don't want.
Note that.
Says you, but okay. If you don't read it, then we'll never know. So go ahead.
I remember just an aside anecdote. I remember this one. I had a Sestina in a manuscript, not that one I was just talking about, but and my good friend Maggie Dietz, the poet, she would always read my manuscripts before I kind of like send them out or do something with them. And the one note she had of that Sestina, she's like, "Don't do this." Like, right out. She's like, no, don't do that. Like, it was a bad Sestina. I just thought, like, oh, I'll shove a Sestina in here too. Like, no, that's not the one.
So was that don't do this one or don't do this form?
The whole poem was wrong. It was awful.
The poem is wrong, but you could go write another one that's better.
I could write another Sestina. I got better at it, but like that one wasn't working. But it was always I appreciated that honesty to like, no, this one's not. Because they're really hard to pull off. It's so admirable when someone does one that is not only it's so good, but it's like you don't feel, like you said, you don't feel it. Like you don't feel the sonnet. It's not hitting you over the head with its form. The form is organic to what's going on. And you're just like, I didn't realize that was in a form.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I bow to you too. That's not a form I've ever tried. So I'm not, I go through sonnets. I've written dozens and dozens of sonnets, but that's as tight as I work into form. Because as a songwriter, that's my experience of working in very, very tight forms, that's what happens when you're writing a song.
Yep.
Because because the rhythm has to be right, and the syllables can't just count right with the melody. They also have to either rise or fall with the melody in a natural way that the words rise and fall when spoken. That's the way that I like to write. So, in other words, the words have to fit into an even tighter space for them to be really effective. So that's kind of for me where I scratch that itch. The rest of the time, I just write in blank verse and
Yeah.
go have a sandwich. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was thinking about parents and sickness too, and also you brought up our repetition as incantation. So I have this poem on nights when I am my mother, which
Ah,
um, it's not it's not in a specific form, but it has that it uses anaphora, a repeated phrase to kind of give it that kind of
yeah.
a sense of incantation, a sort of sense of form. And this poem, I Meg Day's last her first book. Um, it's a great book. She has all these poems. Meg Day's a great poet. She works in form and open verse and all those things, but she has a series of poems where it's on nights when I am someone and she's someone else. In one poem, she's Amelia Earhart. Another poem, she's able. She goes by, she and they. She's able to pass as a man, and so it's the poem is on nights when I am your husband, and she's with her partner, and she can pretend to be the man in the relationship, and they can look normal. So it's like this great conceit on nights when I am someone else, and I on days when I'm someone else. So I had this poem. I kept thinking for years. My dad was sick for a long time before he passed, about 7.5 years. He had a massive ulcer that kind of just took everything out of his stomach and insides, kidney things, just destroyed him. But he hung on for 7.5 years. And it was hard for us, but it was really hard for my mother. And I wrote a lot about my dad in one of my books, but this poem is about her, like what she must have been going through and trying to get inside her head and write sort of persona poem and to try to like understand what it was like for her to be so tender and so strong and to take all this on without us, without burdening her sons who were seeing their father weaken and die. Um, so I thought I'd read this one. On nights when I am my mother. On nights when I am my mother, I have still not drifted to the center of our California king as I lie awake, wondering if that bellowing belly, those deep brown eyes, that smile that could calm the devil, my husband, who died 9 years ago after his 7 years slow withering, whether he loved me or just the presence of me. The role of me going to Marshall's to clothe the kids for school, cutting the lawn or having it cut, meeting with teachers, filling the fridge, especially with ice cream for when he'd come home on Sundays and I'd take the boys to Matthew's church as he laid in bed watching Bonanza reruns. I wondered, did I love him? And when I joked to my sons that my first sleepover away from home was my honeymoon, I laugh, but suck back a breath and wonder if that is why I married him. On nights when I am my mother, I can still see him cigarette thin in the face of my football coach father in the soft lit and warm kitchen I grew up in, asking my father for my hand. My father has just said he's not impressed, and the man I will marry says he's not there to impress him. On nights when I am my mother, I hope the boys will bring the kids by, that my oldest will not be so short with me in the same way the man I married was. On nights when I am my mother, I am sorry that I am a fool to my son who does not know what it feels like to every day to bride a wound that will not heal in a sucking, sunken stomach. On nights when I am my mother, I wonder if I should have made them help me change their father's dressings, clean the blood, pus, shit, and piss from the sheets. No, I did not want to take that much of their father away from them. No, I am not a fool. They are becoming better fathers than he was, perhaps. But on nights when I am my mother, I don't like the way they bark sometimes at their wives. On nights when I am my mother, the broken flesh that is still my husband asks me for more pain medication, and I say yes, and he asks for more, and I give him more. so a little extra oxy drips through his J tube. On those nights, I remember the way we looked at each other that day we went to the pain management doctor who told him, I don't even know how you were alive. And the first time he wept for the long days of hurt still to come. So when the man I married looks at me, says a little more, I love him, and so I do. And when again paramedics show up to revive him, when our boys arrive, terrified to hold his withered hands, when they leave because they have the luxury to leave, when we are alone again in his sleepless, moaning nights, and he says more without saying more, I know that he is my husband, that he loves me, knows me enough to know that I will, that I am always more.
Wow, thank you.
I want to make my mom cry when she's at readings.
I bet it
Oh,
does.
really?
Yeah, I think she appreciated that we the idea of us seeing her and going, realizing what she did and what she had to go through, because it's hard, you're the caretaker of somebody dying and you're alone a lot in that role.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's with 7 years, you said? That's a long time.
Yeah.
That is a long time. Do you ever talk to her about what you've captured of her in this poem? I mean, does she ever say, yeah, that's how I felt? Or
Yeah, no, she's pretty I think in her tears say a lot. That she smiles
yeah,
and cries like thank you for that, that was she, because I felt like you guys didn't even sometimes, you don't feel like anyone sees what you're doing, and
yes,
we
yes.
saw it and we tried to as best we could. It was tough because we were also starting our families and having young kids. I have two brothers. We all started having kids around the same time, which was great for her to be grandmother, but it's also like this is going on too. And we were so busy, and she's just such a tough tank of a woman that she didn't want to put us under any more duress than we needed, or any more like chores. We tried to help, but we didn't even know how much she was even doing because she wouldn't tell us.
Yeah. So was writing this cathartic for you
Yeah, yeah,
to try to inhabit her, her soul set, mindset, heart set?
absolutely. I mean, and sons, they can be sometimes can have moments where the moms are like, "Oh, why are you being so foolish? Why you don't understand?" But like to write into that line where like they think I'm a fool. I am not a fool. Like the way I realized in the writing of it that she's doing all this so we wouldn't lose more of him than we were already losing. We didn't
Yeah,
have to see how weak and hurt he was. We didn't have to see his tears that day at the doctor who didn't know how he's even alive. We didn't know about that till after kept that. Kept that from us because she knew that would be a lot for us to lose. We were losing so much already. She's like, I'm going to take that. I'll hold that for you until
yeah.
you're
I
ready.
mean, it's a beautiful thing, and it's certainly very convincing. That's why I asked if you would actually talk to her about whether if she said, yeah, you've captured. That's why I did that. That's where I was. You know, um, you've seen into it. Uh, yeah, structurally, to go back to your first poem when we were talking about how it was all one sentence, and as you say, this one partakes of the kind of the again the incantatory nature, and you've got very long. It's not broken into stanzas; it's all one piece. But if you look at it sentence by sentence, you've got some very long sentences punctuated by very short sentences, and then you'll start again with "but when I am my mother," starting another long sentence. And so it's got a kind of a tidal rhythm to it. Yeah. It, again, the feeling that you get is that it's a profusion of feeling, that we get details, but it's a profusion of feeling. It's a gushing of the whole thing is feeling coming out at us. Um, and that's remarkable, and I think the form is appropriate for that.
Thank you.
And I
Yeah.
really admire that's I'm looking at the second page and when it comes to the medication part, because there's such a balance there between like too much and not enough, and the whole delicacy of that, and how
Yeah.
much time and commitment that takes to be constantly in that headspace of having to think about that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really powerful.
Oh, thank you.
I think it helps if the reader has lived long enough to go through the passing of her or his parents, um, because the other thing that's going on here is a kind of a shifting of the roles. I mean, you're adopting the role of your mother in this, um, and as we go through these stages in our lives, we go through those points where our parents come under our care,
Yep.
um, when we spent the whole first part of our lives under their care. And that's a natural, if you're fortunate enough to have your parents around long enough in your life, then that's a natural progression if they're not taken away, unnaturally soon. Um, but all these, in other words, these are all more or less familiar if you've lived through that part of the cycle. So that only makes it, the strength of it, more apparent to an older reader. Yeah, wow. Um, well, it's funny. I have a long poem that I've used in another show about about me helping my mother in her final days. That is, that would if you read it, it would illustrate the thing that I just said. That you go through that. I mean, I was able to actually help her um, accept her own death, which was, you know, you can't order that opportunity. If it comes to you, you can deal with it, or you can try not to deal with it. Although that gets us back to the, to the remorse and guilt part. But yeah, it's a rare situation. So your mother for all that time was in that. I can't imagine being in that situation for 7 years. I dealt with it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So wow.
She's strong. Still
Very.
kicking,
What?
still working. Still working for the little public school system.
Really?
Felt
How
that,
old?
yeah.
How old is she?
She's 80, gonna be 81 this summer.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
good for her. Wow. Well, these are strong poems. This is great. I have to. The one that I'm going to read now is one that I wrote during COVID, and one of the things that struck me about the COVID time, coming as I do from a family that was very physically demonstrative. We're huggers, and I know everybody isn't like that, but I mean, it's not news that Sicilian American families might be huggers. So it goes all the way back for me to my early childhood. Until the age of 5, I lived upstairs in a tenement with my grandparents on the ground floor and my parents and me on the second floor. And so I spent a lot of time around my grandparents when I was small. And so this is about hugging, and I wrote it because it was in a time of there will be no hugging.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't a fan of there will be no hugging, but Nobody asked me my opinion. Um, so this is called Body Language. It's pretty simple as form-wise. So big the hugs my Nunna gave, I feel them now beyond the grave. I held the chance to squeeze her dear. I'd run as soon as I could see her. And pausing from some kitchen task, how much you love me, she would ask. Too great her waist I always found for me to get my arms around. Still, long I gloried in her touch and answered always, much and much. A year since hugs have been forbidden. My urge for reaching out kept hidden. Touched at the vein on occasion of a guided needlepoint's invasion, in which I'm only free to bleed. I can't articulate my need, except to say that emptiness still seeks to make my little less. The dark is close as I awaken, on my back my rest forsaken. I find my arms are open wide and flung straight out on either side, as though to hold in an embrace all I can reach of time and space. Too much and much is what I've found for me to get my arms around.
That's great. Last stanza there. I love how I was thinking again, so we're talking about form a lot. The rhyming couplets are like a hug. They're two things coming together and holding each other. The form serves the subject matter, which is always what you want. You want it to just be arbitrary, but it really seems to work for what you're, the topic.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That feels right to me, so I'm glad to hear you say it. It was not a conscious choice, but it was definitely an unconscious one, I think, for the reason you give.
Much and much. I love that.
She was a large woman and I was a very small boy, and I had no chance of getting my arms around her. That wasn't going to happen. Even when I was go ahead, please.
No, I just love the progression in the poem, the way that's very childlike in the beginning because you're recalling that childhood memory, but then the layers of it getting, deeper and more serious because we're dealing with more serious stuff. It's still the hug that you wish you could have, but you can't because of the times.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it starts in my grandmother's kitchen and it ends with me trying to embrace the world, which is, I can no more successfully embrace the world than I could embrace my no. Too much.
The world is too much with us.
Yeah.
Getting and spending, we waste our time, but yeah, I love that.
I can't get my arms around it. I can't get my brain around it. There's a lot of things about the world I can't get around, especially nowadays. So this was, I think I wrote this maybe in the first year of COVID when it was really keep your distance.
Yeah.
It's a time that I'm not sure. There are ways in which we haven't recovered from it, but I think that there are ways in which we haven't recovered from it, of which we're not aware.
Yeah, I think there's a comedian, Mark Maron, who always brings it up. We went through this national trauma. We just moved on. We didn't talk about it. We just kept going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still with us. Yep. It shows up and will continue to show up in unexpected ways and at seemingly random moments. But it's in us. We moved on partly because everything started to get even more crazy right around the time that it relaxed a little bit. Then everything went all to hell.
Yeah.
So, you keep trying to reset the mechanism and find a new normal. But I don't want this to be normal. what's going on. Um, anyway, so that's one of my fondest memories, was hugging my grandmother. So yeah, I miss that world, and I try to recreate it, as you'll see. The poem that I swapped in. Did you get, Matt? Did you get the one that I swapped in?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an attempt to revivify that world,
Huh.
which I'll get to after a bit. So let's bring things back to Marybeth and see what she's going to give us next.